In this world, there exists a fragile balance that we often take for granted. The sun rises, children walk to school, and laughter floats through open windows. For Whitney Decker, that balance was found in the faces of her three daughters: 9-year-old Paityn, the thoughtful and nurturing big sister; 8-year-old Evelyn, whose eyes sparkled with mischief and dreams; and 5-year-old Olivia, a tiny whirlwind of love and tenderness, whose hugs could heal any wound. Their world, woven from school plays, dance lessons, and whispered secrets beneath the covers, was Whitney's entire universe. On Friday, May 31st, 2025, that balance began to crack, though no one yet heard the ominous creak. The air in Wenatchee, Washington, was filled with the promise of summer. Travis Decker, their father and Whitney's ex-husband, arrived to pick up the girls for the weekend. It was a routine event, part of a court-ordered custody arrangement, the kind of ritual that formed the delicate mosaic of post-divorce life. Whitney watched as her daughters, bubbling with anticipation, jumped into his white GMC Sierra pickup truck. She waved goodbye, exchanging a few polite words with Travis. "See you Sunday at 8, he said. There was nothing unusual in his tone, but in his eyes, something she would later recall with soul-chilling dread, there was already an emptiness, a void waiting to consume everything. That day was the last time their world was whole, the last time her daughter's laughter filled the air, not as a comforting presence, but as a haunting echo in unbearable silence. Sunday dragged on like molasses. Whitney made dinner, listening for the sound of approaching tires. 8 o'clock came and went, then 8:30, then 9. The silence in the house grew thick and suffocating. She started calling Travis, ring after ring, each one ending in voicemail. "Hi, this is Travis. Leave a message. Non Josh." That calm, recorded voice now felt like a cruel joke. Panic is a cold, slippery beast that slowly coils around your heart. At first, Whitney tried to explain it away: traffic, a dead phone, maybe they stopped somewhere and lost track of time. Travis had been scatterbrained lately, but deep down, in that shadowed corner of a mother's soul where her darkest fears lived, she knew something was wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. Her fingers trembled as she dialed 911 at 9:45 p.m. The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional, but Whitney struggled to find the words, trying not to break down. "My ex-husband. He hasn't brought my daughters back. Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia. He's not allowed to keep them overnight. The court forbade it." At the Wenatchee police station, they listened to her with polite sympathy, but not urgency. To them, it was another domestic dispute, another story of parents using children as pawns in their battles. "This happens all the time, ma'am," an officer told her with a tired expression. "Most of the time, they turn up the next morning with some silly excuse." Whitney tried to make them understand the bigger picture. Travis wasn't just an irresponsible father. He was an Afghanistan war veteran, diagnosed with complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder. He had lost his job, become homeless, and was living out of his pickup truck or crashing at a National Guard armory. His mental health had been visibly deteriorating. That's why the court had revised the custody plan, forbidding overnight visits until he had stable housing. The children were not safe. She knew that. She felt it in every cell of her body. She pleaded with them to issue an Amber Alert, a statewide emergency alert system that flashes missing children's faces on phone screens, billboards, and TV. It was their best shot. Someone might see his truck, see him, see the girls, before it was too late. But her plea slammed into a bureaucratic wall. The Washington State Patrol denied the request. The case didn't meet their strict criteria. There was no evidence of an abduction by a stranger or of an immediate danger to life. A custody dispute. That was the verdict. Instead, they issued a lower priority endangered missing persons alert, sent primarily to law enforcement agencies. To Whitney, it felt like a death sentence. While the system weighed policies and worried about alert fatigue, precious hours were slipping away, hours in which her daughters might still be alive. She left the station feeling utterly powerless. The world kept turning, unaware that hers was crumbling, and no one seemed to grasp the scale of the catastrophe that was unfolding. To understand how a father could become a monster, one had to look into the fractured soul of Travis Decker. He hadn't always been this way. Friends and family remembered him as a determined young man who enlisted in the U.S. Army in 2011. He served his country. He survived the hell of Afghanistan. But war leaves scars, not all of them visible. Travis came back changed. The war took up residence in his mind, haunting him with flashbacks, nightmares, and relentless paranoia. He was a soldier who never really left the battlefield. Diagnoses like PTSD and borderline personality disorder were mere labels. They couldn't capture the daily torment he endured. He tried to get help through the Department of Veterans Affairs, but like so many others, he ran headlong into bureaucracy and underfunded services. The system that trained him to be a soldier was incapable of helping him become a civilian again. His 10-year marriage to Whitney began to unravel. In 2023, it was Travis who filed for divorce. The reason he gave was heartbreaking. "I feel like I don't deserve this." A surrender from a man crushed by his demons. After the divorce, his descent accelerated. He lost his apartment, became homeless. His home was a truck or a cot at the National Guard Armory, where he was still technically listed. Whitney saw the breakdown happening. She worried not only for him, but for the girls. During visits, the girls would call her crying. Once, they said they were left unsupervised, playing with heavy gym equipment at the armory. One of them got hurt. They were afraid of his angry outbursts, especially when he yelled at their dog. There was another darker layer Whitney hadn't shared with the court, afraid it might cut Travis off from the children forever. A neighbor later told police that Whitney once confided she had suffered domestic abuse. The neighbor had seen Travis with a bruised face, and Whitney with her arm in a sling. "An accident," she said. Like many victims, she probably believed his rage would never touch the kids. She tried to walk a line, protect her daughters without severing their bond with a father they still loved and who, she hoped, still loved them back. The court listened to her concerns about housing instability and modified the custody arrangement. No overnights, supervised daytime visits only. It was a compromise meant to protect everyone, but it may have been the final straw for Travis. The loss of control, the humiliation, the realization that, legally, he was no longer seen as a competent father. It might have pushed him over the edge. In the days leading up to the tragedy, his actions pointed toward a desperate plan for escape. His Google search history said it all. How to move to Canada. Joy, jobs in Canada. Relocation to Canada. He was searching for a way out, a new life, but seemingly not one that included his daughters. Or worse, he had decided that if he couldn't have them, no one would. Monday, June 2nd. The search that had stumbled through the weekend finally gained momentum. Investigators tracked Travis's cell phone signal and reviewed surveillance footage. His white pickup had headed west on Highway 2 toward the rugged Cascade Mountains. Search teams, K-9 units, and helicopters scoured the dense forests of Chelan County. Around 3:45 p.m., a sheriff's deputy patrolling a remote area near Rock Island Campground, about 15 miles from the town of Leavenworth, spotted the familiar white pickup. It was abandoned, silent, and ominous against the backdrop of majestic nature. The crime scene told its own horrific story without words. On the tailgate of the truck, forensics found 2 bloody handprints. Inside was his wallet. Beside the vehicle, their family dog sat, shaken but alive. But the most harrowing discovery awaited the search team about 75 yards from the truck, down a small slope hidden in thick brush. There, among moss and fallen leaves, they found them. Paityn, Evelyn, Olivia. Even for hardened law enforcement veterans, the sight was shattering. Each girl's hands had been zip-tied behind her back. Plastic bags covered their heads. They had died of suffocation. This was no outburst of rage. It was a cold, calculated, and unimaginably cruel execution. Nearby, more bags and zip ties were scattered. As if the killer hadn't found the right ones at first, or had to make several attempts, Travis Decker was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into the forest, leaving behind the scene of an unthinkable crime. Further investigation revealed just how methodically he had planned it. Phone records confirmed that Travis had scouted the campground the day before picking up his daughters. He chose the spot in advance. He may have hidden supplies there, mapped an escape route. A former soldier trained in elite survival tactics, he had turned the wilderness into his ally. He knew how to move unnoticed, how to find food, how to evade capture. The case immediately shifted from a custody violation to a triple homicide. The endangered children alert was replaced by a nationwide manhunt for a dangerous fugitive. What followed became one of the largest manhunts in Washington state history. Hundreds of officers from local, state, and federal agencies, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, Department of Homeland Security, combed thousands of square miles of wilderness. National Guard helicopters with thermal imaging swept over the tree canopy. K-9 units pushed through impassable thickets. Drones scanned the landscape from above. Authorities warned the public Travis Decker was armed and extremely dangerous. He wasn't just a fugitive. He was a highly skilled survivalist capable of living off the land for weeks, even months. He knew the terrain. He thought several steps ahead. Those bloody prints on the truck? He may have left them intentionally to throw off law enforcement to make them think he was injured or dead. Local residents were terrified. Officials closed popular hiking trails and campgrounds. People living in remote cabins and farms were told to lock all doors, barns, and sheds, leave outdoor lights on, and keep their curtains open. Anyone could become his next target if he needed food, shelter, or transportation. Tips poured in by the hundreds, sightings of someone who looked like Decker. Police followed up on each one. All false. He was like a ghost. Theories swirled. Had he taken his own life after killing his daughters? Statistics suggested it was likely. Maybe his body lay deep in a ravine, never to be found. Or was he still alive, trekking north toward the Canadian border using the nearby Pacific Crest Trail? His Google searches made that theory chillingly plausible. A $20,000 reward was offered for his capture. His face, bearded, tired, eyes heavy with rage and despair, was everywhere. In the news, on social media, on posters at gas stations and stores. A man who once wore the uniform with pride was now one of America's most wanted. The tragedy in Wenatchee exposed deep fractures in American society. It became a catalyst for tough questions, ones without easy answers. The first and loudest question was aimed at the alert system. Why wasn't an Amber Alert issued? In hindsight, the decision by the State Patrol seemed like a colossal failure. Yes, the criteria were strict, but the Decker case was the textbook definition of imminent danger. A father with severe mental health issues, homeless, violating a court order that explicitly barred overnight custody. This was not a custody dispute. It was a ticking time bomb. Whitney and her attorneys launched a campaign to change the Amber Alert guidelines so that another mother's desperate cries wouldn't be met with bureaucratic indifference. The second question focused on veteran support systems. Travis Decker's story was a heartbreaking example of how the country fails its heroes. He gave his health, his sanity, in service to his country. But when he came home broken and in need, that same country couldn't help him heal. His fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and visible. Many saw it coming. No one stopped it. It sparked a national conversation about whether we are truly doing enough for the mental health of returning soldiers. The third question centered around family courts and domestic abuse. Whitney had done everything she could within the system. She raised red flags. She fought for supervised visitation. But the very system designed to protect children failed to prevent the unthinkable. Her silence about the domestic violence, likely born of fear and hope, highlighted the impossible position thousands of women find themselves in. Speak up and risk the courts cutting all contact. Stay silent and risk something worse. The Wenatchee community was devastated. At Lincoln Elementary School, where the girls had studied, a spontaneous memorial grew. 3 small crosses, stuffed animals, flowers, and handwritten notes. These girls were a light in this world, and the world is darker without them, one family friend wrote. A GoFundMe was launched to help Whitney through her unimaginable grief. Donations poured in from across the country, eventually surpassing $1 million, a collective act of compassion. A nation tried, in its own way, to hold the mother who had lost everything. And somehow, even in her boundless grief, Whitney found room for empathy. Through her attorney, she shared a message. Despite what her ex-husband had done, despite the monstrous nature of the act, she still felt a deep well of love and sympathy for Travis and the person he used to be. She didn't see only the killer, she saw a broken human being, a product of a system that built him up and then abandoned him. Her strength, her grace, her ability to see through pain stunned those following the case. The manhunt for Travis Decker continues. He may still be out there, hidden in the silent forests, or he may be long gone. But for Whitney Decker and everyone who loved Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia, his capture won't bring peace. It won't bring the girls back. Justice, in this case, is only a shadow of what was lost. But as long as he remains free, the story is not over. It remains an open wound, a chilling reminder of how fragile life is, how systems can fail, and how darkness can wear the face of someone we once trusted. And somewhere out there, in the deafening silence, the echo of 3 little voices still lingers. Voices that deserved to grow up, to love, to laugh. But were silenced forever by the hands of the man who was supposed to protect them. The world waits, breath held for the ghost of the Cascades to be found, and for the final, darkest chapter of this tragedy to be written. Of course, a new chapter was added as you requested, highlighting the public's reaction and a closing message to the audience, all written in a detailed, emotional style. There is a fragile balance in the world, stitched together by our daily rituals that we take for granted, until it shatters with a deafening crack. The sun rises, children go to school, laughter drifts from open windows. For Whitney Decker, that balance lived in the radiant faces of her 3 daughters. 9-year-old Paityn, a natural leader, calm and caring, who mothered her little sisters like it was second nature. 8-year-old Evelyn, a dreamer, mischievous and whimsical, who could spin stories that transported them all to imaginary worlds. And 5-year-old Olivia, a storm of love and sweetness, whose spontaneous hugs could heal any heart. Their world, made of school plays at Lincoln Elementary, dance lessons, soccer games, and secrets whispered under blankets, was an entire universe to Whitney. Friday, May 31st, 2025, that balance began to fracture, though no one yet heard the tectonic plates groaning beneath their feet. The air in Wenatchee, Washington was thick with the scent of summer. Travis Decker, their father and Whitney's ex-husband, pulled up in his white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup. This was routine, tense but familiar, set by the cold words of a court order. One more fragment in the complicated puzzle of post-divorce life. Whitney watched her daughters, giddy with excitement, climb into the truck. They loved their dad, and she didn't want to take that from them. She and Travis exchanged a few casual words about the weather and weekend plans. He seemed calm, maybe a bit distant. He had looked more and more worn in recent months, as if carrying a weight no one else could see. But she brushed it off. "See you Sunday at 8, he said. His voice was steady, but in his eyes, something she would later remember with bone-deep terror, there was a void. Not sadness, not anger, just a hollow nothingness, a vacuum waiting to devour everything. She waved goodbye as the truck disappeared around the bend, taking her heart with it. That was the last day their world was whole. The last day her daughter's laughter was part of her life's soundtrack, before it became a tormenting echo in unbearable silence. The manhunt for Travis Decker is still ongoing. He may still be out there, hidden deep in the silent forests, or he may already be far beyond their reach. But as we wait for the final chapter in this horrifying story to be written, we cannot allow ourselves to be just passive onlookers. This tragedy isn't just another entry in the crime section. It's a brutal lesson we, as a society, must learn if we hope to prevent something like this from ever happening again. So what can we do? What needs to change? First, we must demand reform of the emergency alert system. A child's life shouldn't depend on checkboxes and formal criteria that fail to reflect the full scope of the danger. The voice of a terrified parent, backed by real evidence of instability, must be heard and taken seriously. Second, we need to fight for accessible, effective mental health care for our veterans. They fought for us. We must fight for them when they come home. That means better funding, less red tape, and real rehabilitation programs, not just pamphlets and phone numbers. Third, we need to raise awareness about domestic abuse and support the people who experience it. We must create a world where women like Whitney aren't afraid to ask for help because they know the system will protect them, not leave them alone in the path of violence. And finally, on the most personal level, we must look out for one another, our friends, our neighbors, our family members. If you see someone struggling, sinking into depression or desperation, don't look away. Sometimes a kind word, an offer to help, or a timely call to the right authorities can change everything. It can save a life. This story leaves us with so many questions and so few answers. So now, I want to turn to you, our viewers. What do you think? Do you believe the authorities made a mistake by not issuing an Amber Alert? What steps do you think are most important to prevent tragedies like this from happening again? Was Travis Decker a cold-blooded monster, or a victim of circumstance and mental illness? Or maybe both? Your thoughts matter. This channel isn't just a place to share stories. It's a platform for real conversations. Please share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. City, state, country. It's powerful to see how one story can unite people from across the world in a shared moment of grief, reflection, and the search for truth. If this story moved you, if you believe it needs to be heard, please support our channel. Like this video. It helps the algorithm show it to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future investigations. And most importantly, share your voice in the comments. Every like, every subscription, every comment, is a way to make sure that the voices of Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia are never forgotten, and that the lessons of their tragic deaths are never lost. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves and each other.